But we're going to start in Esther chapter 1. And I'm just going to read, first of all, just the first four verses. It says, These events happened in the days of King Xerxes, who reigned over 127 provinces, stretching from India to Ethiopia. Right now, that would be in the Africa area still. At that time, Xerxes ruled his empire from his royal throne at the fortress of Susa, which was the capital. And the third year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials. He invited all the military officers of Persia and Media, as well as the princes and nobles of the provinces. The celebration lasted 180 days, a tremendous display of the opulent wealth of his empire and the pomp and splendor of his majesty. So basically, this king was a pagan king. Um, he was a pagan king with a pagan empire, and he just had him a great big old party for all of these days, 180 days. Um, we will read on in a little bit that talks about basically they've got an open bar. He's invited all of these officials to come in from all over the area from 127 provinces. Now, this one tidbit here is not necessarily fact, it's just something that I've read. Is that one of the reasons, maybe, that he is having this banquet is not just so he can show off all of his wealth and power and all of that, but part of it also is rumor is he was trying to get people on his side because he was wanting to go to war, and he wanted everyone to know that he had money, he had power, he wanted everyone on his side. So if he decided to go off to war to basically overtake more of the area and grow his empire, that he would have these provinces on his side when he did so. Again, that's not a fact. That is just some things that some commentaries that I read believe may be part of the reason why he had this big old party. BJ, you got anything?
Nope. That's just keep on going.
All right, verse 5. When it was all over, the king gave a banquet for all the people, from the greatest to the least, who were in the fortress of Susa. It lasted for 7 days and was held in the courtyard of the palace garden. The courtyard was beautifully decorated with white cotton curtains and blue hangings, which were fastened with white linen cords and purple ribbons, to silver rings embedded in marble pillars. Gold and silver couches stood on mosaic pavement, marble, mother of pearl, and other costly stones. Drinks were served in gold goblets of many designs, and there was an abundance of royal wine, reflecting the king's generosity. By edict of the king, no limits were placed on the drinking, for the king had instructed all his palace officials to serve each man as much as he wanted. At the same time, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. So we got a drunken king, and he
Open
just wants
bar.
to show off all of his things. Do it. An
I
open
said with an open bar,
bar.
all the people were drinking a lot.
A whole lot. I mean, you think about it, 180 days, and so 180 days, he has all these other people, his most important people come, right? Then he throws the second party, and he's like, okay, all you other low lifes over here, it says from the least to the great. Okay, now y'all can come. And so he invites everybody else to come in. I don't know, but back in my partying days, I'd have been really excited about an open bar for that many days.
Especially at somebody important's house.
Yeah, they had all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I
hmm
wonder how much got broke in this party.
That's why it was all made out of gold.
Yeah, golden beds. Who wants to lay on a golden bed anyway?
Yeah,
That sounds
and
real comfortable.
marble.
Yeah. And then you got Queen Vashti over here. She has a banquet, but look, it's for the women because the women could not be a part of what the men were doing. They had to be separated. So the women couldn't mingle with the men because the women were beneath them.
Mm.
All right. Anybody got, we just kind of wanted to paraphrase this because we kind of wanted to get on to the good stuff. But does anybody have anything in these first few verses that maybe you're knowledgeable about, something that we didn't touch on, or something you see that you want to add
Or ask.
or ask? Yeah. I don't know that we'll
Not
have
that
an
we're
answer, but you can ask.
I was just thinking we might not get to answer you, but you can ask.
All right, BJ, you want to start in verse 10?
Okay, yep. On the seventh day of the feast, when King Xerxes was in high spirits because of the wine, he told the seven eunuchs who attended him, "Oh, you gave me the hard names. That was just rude. Me human. Bistha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagatha, Zethar, and Carcass." Now,
Card.
that may not be the real way you say those names, but anyways, verse 11, to bring Queen Vashti to him with the royal crown on her head. He wanted the nobles and all the other men to gaze on her beauty, for she was a very beautiful woman. So let's just stop right there for a second. And so this was new to me, and all of you are going to be like, "Oh my gosh, BJ, you're so dumb." But I never, when you kind of break this down and start studying it, I never really got that this was, I knew it was inappropriate and it was rude, but I never really got that it was a very sexual in nature, um, command request that he did. And in a lot, well, everybody is basically in agreement that either she was wearing only a crown, what he wanted was for her to only be wearing a crown, or at the very least, she would be wearing almost only the crown. So it would have been literally prancing his naked, beautiful wife in front of all of these drunken, from the greatest to the least, drunken, no limits, open bar for 7 days men, to just oogle and Google at. And that wasn't good. And so, anyways, I didn't ever realize that.
Yeah, I mean, just think about how that would. I mean, first of all, you have a king that's got everything. Like, there's nothing that he lacks when it comes to material things, possessions, power. He is literally a man who has everything that the world has to offer. And he's got the most beautiful wife. And it's like he's shown everything else off, but that wasn't enough. He had to just go one more step, wanting to show off his wife. But I mean, think about her, how she felt when she gets word the king has summoned you to come in here, knowing that in all probability it was asking her to come with just a crown on her head. I mean, just think about how that would make you feel, as a woman, to be paraded in front of all these drunk people. Now, I wonder, would he have done that if he wasn't drunk? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But it goes to show too that we can let power go to our heads and ask some of the most ridiculous things, or set such great standards, or for people that is just very unrealistic, when we get caught up in power, material things, wealth, whatever. It's almost like when you get caught up into that in the way that he was, it's like you're living on a whole different planet. You look at everything completely different in the world. And that's exactly what's going on in this day and time now. Everything's about money, right? And so, anyway, I just wonder about her and how she must have felt, to be
Yeah.
asked to that.
Well, and this isn't really about being anti-alcohol in any way. That's not where I was going with this. But also, I have to assume that he's not thinking really clearly that even what he's wanting to bring his naked or almost naked beautiful wife into this drunken room of men, full of men, what are the consequences of that? Because it's not like she can just walk through and then walk away, like, with the little Miss America wave, most likely. The consequences of having a woman, and I think about, like, in today's world, and Denise and I have both worked with sex trafficking victims and all the things, and keeping in mind that even though she's the queen, she's also technically part of his harem. So she's used to being used as ever he wants. sexually, anyways. And so, like, it was a real thing, a real fear to think, I am not going into this room. And really, how brave it was for her to refuse to do that. And
Mhm.
I will just say, literally, until today, I've never even thought of her as someone who was brave to refuse the king's orders. I'm just curious. First off, I don't know if you've ever read the book of Esther or if you're an Esther scholar, but in that, I mean, what are your thoughts? Did you all know that it was brave for Queen Vashti to not go when the king summoned her?
I never thought about it. Really. I mean, we read this book, and then a few of us actually went up to Missouri to see the show Esther at Sight and Sound, and it was beautiful. It was fantastic. But yeah, I mean, you still don't get all of the nuances of what's happening and
Yeah.
what you're supposed to be paying attention to because there's so much going on. But it was
Yeah.
really good. Yeah. But no, I never really thought about it. Mm-mm.
Yeah, me either. I thought it was fascinating. Honestly, I will say, I was sharing this with Denise earlier. I've always kind of just put her in the almost in the same category as a Jezebel, who is also a bad queen. And like she's like, no, I'm not gonna do what I don't want to do. I am woman, hear me roar. And that's totally not at all the reality. She was basically protecting herself.
Yeah.
And she took a stand in knowing that she could either be killed or banished ultimately, and saying, you're not going to use me in this way. You're not going to prance me around. And ultimately, the reality is potentially be gang raped by all these drunken men.
Mhm.
Anyways, I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. Did y'all know that he was wanting her to come in nothing but a crown? No?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Right? That is such big news. I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
That's why it's so fun to study God's word because you learn all the new things.
Right.
I've read the book of Esther so many times, and I've even taught it, not super deep like this, but I have taught the book of Esther before, or at least portions of it. And like I just didn't know. I didn't know.
Well, it gets worse. I don't know. Verse 12, but when they conveyed the king's order to Queen Vashti, she refused to come. This made the king furious, and he burned with anger. Now, this just cracks me up right here. Verse 13. He immediately consulted with his wise advisors who knew all the Persian laws and customs, for he always asked their advice. Oh, here I got some names. The names of these men were Kershana, Shether, and seven nobles of Persia and Media.
That was great.
They met with the king regularly and held the highest position in the empire. Look, this is so funny to me because he calls his wife, and when she says no, when she sends word back, and that, I mean, can you, I don't know who the person was that like brought the message, but can you imagine when they came back and they had to go in front of the king and be like, sorry, sir, but yeah, she says she ain't coming. I mean, back in that day, even the messenger could get beheaded. You know, like they didn't play back then. And to give him the message she ain't coming. And so what he gets so mad and he like brings his guys over. And to me, I just see like this football huddle. You know, it's like come together. Okay, guys, look, this the queen says she ain't coming. What are we gonna do about this? What can I do legally? What am I supposed to do? What do you advise? It's like, but here's the deal. Something had to be done. In his
Yeah.
eyes, it did, because you weren't going to tell him no. So something had to be done. Look at verse 15. It said, what must be done to Queen Vashti? The king demanded. What penalty does the law provide for a queen who refuses to obey the king's orders properly sent through his eunuchs? So in other words, he sent it the right way through the eunuchs, but it still cracks me up because there probably is no law because no queen probably has ever said no to the king. That's
Mhm.
that's just not custom. That's just not what you would do. Verse 16 says, I don't know how you say this, but I really want to say it right. Mimican answered the king and his nobles. Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but also every noble and citizen throughout your empire. Women everywhere will begin to despise their husbands when they learn that Queen Vashti has refused to appear before the king.
Hey, hold on one second, Denise. For anyone that's just coming in, we are in Esther, the book of Esther, chapter 1, and we are currently in right around verse 17,
Mhm.
if you want to catch up with us.
Deborah, did you get on here?
Yeah.
Yay! Awesome. Glad you made it.
Hi,
All right.
Deborah.
Hey, hey.
And so it says, women everywhere will despise their husbands. That, look, all of this kind of cracks me up. I just see some men freaking out. We got the queen that said no, and the other guys are over here like, okay, look, we got to come up with some law, create a law, do something, because when word gets out, my wife might not do what I ask her to do either. Right? I mean, I don't know. That just cracks me up. Anybody got anything? All right, verse 19. So if it please the king, we suggest that you issue a written decree, a law of the Persians and Medes that cannot be revoked. It should order that Queen Vashti be forever banished from the presence of King Xerxes, and that the king should choose another queen more worthy than she. When this decree is published throughout the king's vast empire, husbands everywhere, whatever their rank, will receive proper respect from their wives. I mean, they literally wrote a law for this. Nope, did I leave off in mid sentence? The king and his nobles thought this made good sense, so he followed Memucan's counsel. He sent letters to all parts of the empire, to each province in its own script and language, proclaiming that every man should be the ruler of his own home and should say whatever he pleases. Now, I'll say just because I know that in chapters that we're going to get to in a little while, it takes about, would have taken an estimated 3 to 4 months to get that written letter taken out to all 27 provinces to get it carried out that far. So it would have took a little while, but I don't know. I just like using my imagination sometimes. The word is living, and I think depending on where we are in life, we can all read it and sometimes apply it to our lives in different ways, you know. But the king is wronged, and so what does he do? He demands respect. All the other men are worried about it, and so they literally create a law for this. And it makes me wonder what lengths will we go through to do certain things to make things happen because we don't like the way things are going right now because we're not getting what we want. What lengths will we go to try to make people pay or to get what we want? I mean, again, the world we live in, people go through a lot of, there's crazy things being done in the world all over the place just so people can get what they want.
Yeah. It is crazy.
This doesn't have to do with that, but talking about how long it took is that they were so serious about this. I've worked on a Bible translation when I was the missions director at my church many years ago, and it's a pretty intense thing. But it says that he had letters sent to all parts of the empire, to each province in its own script and language. Like they went through this whole translation process to make sure that everyone understood the man is the boss and the girl better submit, better obey.
Which that's already the way things were there anyways.
Which is how we get to this point anyways, because she literally refuses and gets banished because she refuses.
Y'all sure are quiet on here.
Well, I was going to say
Well, come on, girl.
Say
What you
it.
got to say?
that my commentary says that it was against Persian custom for women to be out in a public gathering of men anyways. And so she was in conflict with her own culture and his command. So it's like she was put in a bad spot. And then it also said, I don't know who the commentary is, but says that she possibly was pregnant too. And so she didn't want to be seen that way. read it out.
I've never heard that, but that does go back to confirm, like the women were having their own party and the men were having their own party. They weren't allowed to party together.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I never heard
Anybody
about
else?
this pregnant thing.
I've never heard that either.
Anybody else?
I'm trying to catch up.
When is this taking place? Like, are there any major things happening? Do we know when this is taking place?
Yeah, so this is, let me go to my notes. I think 436 BC. I've got it in my notes. Hold on.
It's 100 years after the Babylonian exile. And we didn't even talk about that, BJ. Although me and you talked a lot about it before we got on.
My study Bible says that it is possibly Xerxes the First, reigning 486 to 465 BC.
Yeah. So my notes say 480 to 465. Yeah.
BJ, you want to explain the whole thing about the going out of exile and how the King Cyrus or whoever had let the Jews go back and some didn't?
I mean, I can, but it's harder when I'm not just talking to you because I know I'm not a scholar. It was just fascinating to me. But so basically, the Jews had been put in exile, and then they were in exile for however many years. Is it 580 or I don't remember how many years, but then their kings, I think it's King Cyrus. I could be lying to you, but the king basically says that they're allowed to go back. And it's assumed that really very few actually made it back to Jerusalem. First off, the travel was very expensive. It was very dangerous. And by this point, keep in mind, we are like at least 3 generations in. And so it would ultimately be like you being told, okay, you can go back home now where your great-great-grandmother used to live. You've never been there. You have nothing there. None of your family's there. Your job's not there. Nothing's there. But because you're Jew, you can go back now. And so because of that, very few actually left. They had lives here. Most of them, they were allowed to work. They were not slaves at this time. They had lives and families and grandkids. And, I mean, Karen gets it. You go where your grandkids are. You're not going to move away. Like you're going to move to them, not away from them. And so it was very common, very expected that they would not have gone home to Jerusalem where they could have gone back to.
Yeah. So basically, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, y'all remember that story?
Mhm.
And so when they came and took them at that time and overtaken the area and had taken them in, that's the exile that it's talking about, taking them into exile at that time. And so this is taking place 100 years after that. And so you got this whole Jewish community living in Susa, which is the capital of this area where the king has this. And actually, I also read this is like one of 2 of his castles, mansions, whatever. He has one for the winter and one for the summer. And so this is one of 2 that is in the capital of Susa. All right.
Chapter 2. Anybody, before we move on to chapter 2, any other comments or feedback, questions?
Mm-mm.
Okay, chapter 2. But after Xerxes' anger had subsided, he began thinking about Vashti and what she had done and the decree he had made. So his personal attendant suggested, "Let us search the empire to find beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint agents in each province to bring these beautiful young women into the royal harem at the fortress of Susa." Haggai, I don't know how to say the name. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't know. The king's eunuch in charge of the harem will see that they are all given beauty treatments. After that, the young woman who most pleases the king will be made queen instead of Vashti. This advice was very appealing to the king, so he put the plan into effect. So basically, he's like, kind of like, sulking. Oh, I don't have my wife anymore because I banished her. She was bad. But now I want a wife. And so what do I do? And I just see like this mopey, grumpy, sad sack, little, probably hungover king whining because I mean he still has a whole harem, but he didn't have a queen, the special one. Um, and so he just uses his power to then bring in all of these young, untouched women. It's kind of gross, really. Just being real. It's kind of gross.
I wonder, like in that verse 1, when it says that after his anger subsides and he began thinking about Vashti and what she had done and the decree that he had made, I just wonder now that he's sobered up
Right. Yeah,
and
he's
he's
hung
not so
over and he's
angry, I
like,
wonder if he's kind of feeling a tad bit guilty in a way, like he's thinking about the fact that she didn't come. But I would just wonder, did it go through his mind like, dang, I can't believe I tried to get her to come out here, and now I made this decree and this edict, and it can't be reversed. Like when they did that and they put the seal on it, there was no changing it. It is what it is. And so I just wonder if he felt a little guilty and felt a little bad about what he tried to do.
Probably.
that sober remorse.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Second
really
Been there.
thoughts.
Anybody else been there? Oh, look at all
unfortunately.
you go. Oh, there's a few of my people. Just checking.
Well, it's just also that even if it's not drunken remorse, just the hindsight of 2020 of like, wow, that was stupid, and just the reality of what he had asked her to do. And to your point, Denise, the one said edict has been made, it can't be redone, which is why later on another one is made and they can't reverse it. They have to make a new one. And so like the laws are they're pretty taken seriously. So you don't play around with them.
Right. All right. Where'd you leave off at? Verse 5. You want to keep reading or you want me to read?
You can read.
We don't matter. At that time, somebody else want to read?
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be us. Man, y'all don't. Tammy's over there going, nope, not me. Tammy, I'm glad you're on. All right, verse 5. At that time, there was a Jewish man in the fortress of Susa whose name was Mordecai, son of Jair. He was from the tribe of Benjamin and was a descendant of Kish and Shimei. That's why y'all don't want to read. His family had been among those who, with King
Exactly.
Jehoiakim of Judah, had been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. This man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadash, who was also called Esther. When her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her into his family and raised her as his own daughter. Got anything to say, BJ? About any of that?
I don't think so.
I thought you did. He's the Jewish man. So we had this whole talk. And maybe you covered it a while ago when I was texting Deborah, but okay, here's one point of view that I read is, okay, when they were free, they were taken into exile, right? And like BJ said earlier, they had an opportunity for all the Jewish people to go back. And so they were freed. But we're in like the third generation and they don't know the land, like BJ said, and all of that. So you're going to go back to a place you've never been before. But at the same time, we're talking about the Jewish people who are living in an area that is worshiping pagan gods. And so they're having the opportunity to go back. So some commentaries I had read previously when we did the study in our life group was saying, look, Mordecai shouldn't even be here. He should have went back to his homeland because he was Jewish and he should have went back to where they were worshiping the Lord. But then BJ,
I disagree with that because the whole point of Esther that gets quoted, whether you've ever read the book of Esther or not, you've heard it quoted for such a time as this. And so my spin on that is that it is God's providence saying they're here for such a time as this. And so then we got into the whole thing. Well, but if he would have went back, then Xerxes would have never done this, and there wouldn't have needed to be a rescue and all of the things, but there were still a bunch of Jews there, even if Esther and Mordecai wouldn't have been there. And ultimately, again, later on, there's a point where I take it as this is when you're given an assignment, it's a big deal. And ultimately, you don't have to say yes. We don't have to say yes. You don't have to say yes, whatever your assignment is, big or small. And had Esther and Mordecai not been there, someone else would have been chosen. It might have been the book of, Kathy, for all we know. There would have been something. There would have been, the story would have still happened, I believe, whether they were there or not. That's my
I
opinion.
agree.
yeah. Yeah. And very possible.
I agree because mine has a little breakdown on the themes. I have a study Bible, and it's talking about how even though there's a complete absence of any mention of God in the whole book, it still talks about, it's God's chosen people, his plan,
Mhm.
and he has sovereign power at work throughout all of this, regardless.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
And if you don't know this, this is the only book in the Bible that never mentions God's name. And it's kind of cool though when you think about it because his name is not mentioned, but you can see God working in all of it. And it's kind of like the Lord saying, read the book and look for my activity. Look at where I'm working, see where I am. And that's just kind of cool to me, that
That is.
you can see it everywhere, even though his name's not mentioned.
But also, what a reminder to us is that sometimes, as good Jesus loving people, we feel like we have to hammer the Bible over people's heads to make a point. But really, you just have to show up and act nice and be nice to people, love God, love people, and He's gonna show through you. He's gonna show up and do His work if you're not a jerk.
True.
So don't be a jerk.
That's bad.
The whole moral of
Yes,
Esther
ma'am.
is don't be a jerk.
That's, don't be a jerk. But that is, I agree with you. That's true. But I still think we need to mention God.
I think we need to mention Jesus and God.
I know what you're saying, but
A little bit of a rabbit trail is, in today's world, the name of God is not offensive because everyone can believe in a God.
right.
It's the name of Jesus that is offensive. And so I think we should say the name of Jesus every chance we get. That's why I will encourage you, if you pray, to close your prayer in Jesus's name. It's not a rule. It's not like it's not going to get answered.
Mhm.
But if you have a chance to speak the name of Jesus, then do it. That's just.
Yeah. I was just thinking about, how it talks about in the Bible somewhere that basically like everyone is going to everyone's going to have an opportunity to come to know the Lord. Right. And you think about people in another country. I don't know how many of you have ever gone on like mission trips or whatever, but like going into other countries. And I remember one time in Africa, like I think it was maybe one of my first times, probably my first time to ever go. And I remember going out, just walking down these little trails and like you don't know where you're going and you're just following your interpreter. And it seems like nobody's out there. And then all of a sudden we come up into this field. And there's this lady all by herself out there working the fields. And I tell her, we start talking, I just tell her I felt like the Lord had sent me there to tell people about Jesus Christ. And she turns around and says she believes in Jesus Christ. And then she asked to pray for me. But she had never seen a white person before. And so it was really cool. And this right here makes me think of some places, there are places out in other countries, in the jungle, in these places where there has been no person that has come to tell them about Jesus, yet They know God is there because of all of the things God has placed before them. His name may not be mentioned, but they know that he's there because of all the just how he's provided for them, right? So they know that there's something greater than themselves. And that's what this book kind of reminds me of, is that even though his name's not mentioned, we know that there's something greater going on here, because you can see him working all throughout the Bible, all throughout this chapter, this book. Anyway, rabbit trail. All right.
Yeah, that's good. We got 15 minutes. So moving on. Verse 8. As a result of the king's decree, Esther, along with many other young women, were brought to the king's harem at the fortress of Susa and placed under Haggai's care. Haggai was very impressed with Esther and treated her kindly. He quickly ordered, in another translation I was reading this morning, it says that that she had won him over and she was highly favored. Anyways, he quickly ordered a special menu for her and provided her with beauty treatments. He also assigned her 7 maids specially chosen from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maids into the best place in the harem. Anything, comments on that?
I'm going to add
Who
when you
is-
get through.
Oh, who
Go
is
ahead, Catherine.
Haggai? Did I miss it?
I'm sorry, what?
Who is Haggai?
Haggai is the eunuch. He's like the main king, like the king's second number one. He's the number one eunuch that is over the harem. So
Okay.
he's like the boss of all the girls.
Okay.
And so going into this, like again, just that reminder is to not be a crappy person. Like she immediately wins over this guy, the eunuch, and becomes highly favored because he sees something special in her. What were you going to say, Denise?
Well, I mean, that right there, that's God, right? Because it's not by accident that she's the one that finds favor, right? She finds
She's
favor.
set apart.
Do what?
She's set apart. She's different
She's
than
set
the
apart, yeah.
others.
Right. I do want to say, I was going to hold this, but we'll go ahead and say it in case we're out of time. I read this earlier, and then right before we got on, I looked it up one more time. These young virgins that they went searching out would have been between 14 to 16 years old. One thing I watched this earlier on YouTube said 12 to 14, but
I was going to say, I've always heard 12, as young as 12, probably.
yeah. So, and the others I've 14 to 16. So anyway, you're talking 12 to 16 years old, which makes sense because they're looking for virgins and they got married when they were young, right? This King Xerxes, at the time that he married Esther, she became queen, he would have been about 41 years of age. And so just think about that for a minute. You know,
Vomit.
do what?
Vomit.
Selena
Yeah.
said vomit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
BJ and I was talking earlier, like, well, just keep reading because this is like, we talk about human trafficking, sex trafficking, and like, this is it right here back in the Old Testament of the Bible. It's not something new. It's always been there, right? Anyway, go
Well,
ahead.
yeah, that's there's nothing new under the sun, and we think the world that we live in is some kind of terrible, and it is. But it was some kind of terrible BC also. Like it's always been some kind of terrible from the moment sin entered into the world. So yeah. Sorry, I was scrolling to see how much further we have, and I lost my spot.
What verse did she finish on, y'all?
9.
9.
9 was like, okay, verse 10.
I
Esther
scrolled
had
way-
not told anyone of her nationality and family background because Mordecai had directed her not to do so. Every day, Mordecai would take a walk near the courtyard of the harem to find out about Esther and what was happening to her. I love this because Mordecai, like he is wanting to take care of her. He's wanting to know what's going on. He didn't just throw her out there and say, "Hey, you need to, do the best that you can and Good luck to you. You know, he wanted to know and he was checking on her. Verse 12 says, before each young woman was taken to the king's bed, she was given the prescribed 12 months of beauty treatments. 6 months with oil of myrrh, followed by 6 months with special perfumes and ointments. When it was time for her to go to the king's palace, she was given her choice of whatever clothing or jewelry she wanted to take from the harem. That evening, she was taken to the king's private rooms, and the next morning she was brought to the second harem, where the king's wives lived. There she would be under the care of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch in charge of oil and in charge of the concubines. She would never go to the king again unless he had especially enjoyed her and requested her by name. So this right here, it's basically you go through a 1 year beauty treatment system. You get these oils, you get this myrrh, you get these perfumes, these ointments. All of this is done. Then you go sleep with the king, and if he likes her, then he'll call her back. But you go there. But here's the reward before you do that. You can pick out any clothing or jewelry that you want. So it's kind of like you get paid in some material things to come over here and have sex with the king. And then once that's over with, you get placed over here in the other harem. And if you were good enough and he liked you and he wanted you back, then he would request you by name. And so this is just, to me, like this is the same thing as trafficking or prostitution or whatever, getting in that. You get picked. She didn't have a choice if she wanted to partake in this beauty pageant, if she wanted to even try out to be the queen. They went and found young virgins and brought them in, and that was the life that they were given. They didn't have a say in it.
Well, and just the again, just this just pops out is that however, we don't know how many women were taken. We know that there were women taken from every province, and then taken into the this harem, and again, basically night after night or however often, this king is basically, I mean, they're ultimately raped. It might have, I mean, they may not have been fighting it, but they were basically raped, and they had no choice. And they're in seen in that mind, in that culture, not that they had a choice anymore because they're now part of this harem, whether they ever have sex again or it's this one time, they're ruined physically forever. They can never remarry. They're not eligible or suitable for another respectable guy. They've been taken. It's just gross when you really break down what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're the lucky one, you get called back and you can do it again and again.
Yay.
Wow. So in my study Bible, it says on there that it's impossible to tell whether Esther went voluntarily or against her will. I mean, to even think, why would she voluntarily go?
Yeah.
But that's what mine says down here.
Well, I'm just
Who
going
would
by
volunteer?
chapter 2, verse 2 says, so his personal assistant suggested, let us search the empire to find beautiful young virgins for the king, and let the king appoint agents in each province to bring these beautiful young women into the royal harem at the fortress of Susa. And yes, I mean, possibly they went to him and said, hey, do you want to do this? But at the same time, when you've got government officials that are coming from the king to get you, and you're a young girl at that age, I would bet. I mean, look what happened to the queen when she didn't go, and now
That's
they've
true.
made a law already. So, I mean,
Power imbalance.
do what?
Power imbalance.
Power imbalance.
Yes.
And but there could have been, realistically, there could have been some families that were like, pick my daughter because they were hungry, they were poor, they didn't have the resources, just like in today's world. Like it's so easy to think what you would never do, but there are literally families all over the world that have to choose between keeping a son and selling a daughter because they can only feed one.
Right.
And I mean, so there are some that, and even some of the girls were probably like, pick me. The shoe's going to fit, Cinderella kind of stuff. Because they're like, I want to be chosen for the king. And so, and again, like you said, we don't know if Esther went willingly or not because the Bible doesn't tell us. But either way, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I
But
feel like even when we went and saw the play, I feel like Mordecai was not pushing her, but kind of like going, "You should go. You should." He wasn't trying to hide her. He was like, "Oh, here," because I feel like he felt it was being guided by God that this was what needed to happen for whatever was going to happen in the future. So it wasn't like he wasn't not he was I feel like I swear I feel like he was like not pressuring but
Like it's okay.
yeah.
Yeah. And I don't, and again, we don't know, but we do know that Mordecai was at the king's gate, which means he had some kind of political affiliation of working in that area, and we know when you go fast forward many years, you go to Lot. Lot is also working at the gate of the city, right? And so there is anytime you start getting closer to that sin of what's not especially when you're in the Jewish culture, or for us, the Christian culture, anytime you get closer to that sin, the gate of the city, you're having to let go of some of your boundaries. And I don't know if Mordecai was super close to God or not at that time, but at least knowing his political affiliation and that he worked at the gate of the king, it tends to imply that he probably didn't fight it,
Right.
possibly.
But I thought Mordecai was pushing him out and trying to get her there in order to keep God to protect his people.
Well, he doesn't know at the time that there's going to be a conflict for his people. So
Okay.
it's not until later that he ends up overhearing that King Xerxes has a plot to be killed by some of his own men. And then it goes into the other bad guy that we'll get into, ends up plotting to kill the Jews because he gets ticked off at Mordecai. But Mordecai, nobody knows any of that's going to happen at this point. Right now, we're just trying to find a new queen.
Right.
So, why did Mordecai forbid her not to tell her nationality and background?
I mean, we don't know specifically, but historically, Jews are always considered to be less than in every community. And even though they were technically free and they weren't slaves at this time, they were considered less than. And so we don't know. If the Bible doesn't tell us, we don't know.
Well, yeah, I don't know either, but one thing is like when we've not gotten into it, but like Haman, that's going to come up in chapter 3 comes from the Amalekite background or the Canaanites. And so King Xerxes, I don't really know. I need to look that up. I don't know what his, and it probably said it somewhere or another. One of y'all's, I don't have a study Bible on me right here, but it also could be like, if you weren't Jewish, really the rest of them was brought up hating the Jews, right? I mean, like everybody was against the Jews pretty much. And so it could be he didn't want her to say her nationality because wanting to try to keep her safe and not getting her cast out, because a Jew becoming the king's wife, probably if he had known that, then it might would have got her in trouble in some way. I don't know. Or it may be that Mordecai wanted her to become queen and didn't want her to say her nationality because she might not would have had a shot. I don't know. Good question though.
Yeah.
That gives us homework.